to Red, White, and Bi.
Episode 16. You heard us right. The big 16.
It's crazy.
It is crazy. Just last week, or I'm sorry, 2 weeks ago, we were doing 15. Here we are.
Trotting along to 20.
I know. 20's our first goal post that we're aiming for.
Yeah, it's been a crazy week, huh?
It has, in terms of like our personal lives, and we've talked about how we're kind of going through a lot right now, just like at home. And so, again, apologize for the every other format, but it's going to be that way for at least a little bit. And but also a big week in the news cycle.
Yeah, it's been a stressful week. It's been a really strange week, discombobulating, and really like the biggest thing that I'm sure, everybody who's doing a podcast is going to have to talk about this week is the death of Charlie Kirk.
Yeah, it's no matter what side of the aisle you fall on, no matter which news reporting agency you subscribe to, that's the big news in the West right now. In fact, I say the West because we're seeing, I shouldn't even say the West. We're seeing, you posted earlier on social media that South Koreans were holding up signs saying, "We are Charlie Kirk." I know we've heard some mention about protests in London incorporating what happened in Utah this week in their London protests.
Yeah, they're doing a native tribal memorial dance for him in New Zealand.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah.
Oh, that's so touching.
Yeah, I really think it is. And because the idea, I think everybody knows this. If they didn't know it last week, they know it now. For people who are like MAGA, they probably looked at Charlie Kirk as a definite, future president or future head of the RNC, a future leader of America. And so for people to react in a way where they might act if one of our presidents died is not like outside of the norm, but there's an extra touch of tragedy when it's a young person who had a couple of kids at home. Actually, they were at the event and witnessed,
God.
his wife was there, and when you hold family up as so important in your religious life, your life in general, and you're probably making enough money and being enough of a change maker with an organization that you built that you can bring your family wherever you go. Like, it sucks for so many reasons, but it really sucks that someone who's so entitled that they think they can take another life doesn't think about the aftermath and the people around him, and the fact that, you have kids in the audience that are going to see something that's going to shake them and change them forever, and then the whole world saw things that they shouldn't have had to see a few days ago.
Yeah, I and Ash, we've talked about this week. I have purposely avoided, we were, teenagers or young 20s when Osama bin Laden was killed. A little younger than that when Saddam was killed, I think, right? Mm-hmm. And that stuff was on video, and maybe not the actual death, but the abuse and confirmation of the corpse and stuff. I remember those things circulating at that time, and I've always purposely avoided stuff like that. I don't believe in celebrating a death, period. I can't think of really anybody. I mean, the worst villains in history, it's not something I care to watch. I think it takes something from you to watch a thing like that, and we all watched this.
Yeah.
It was so in the middle of nowhere, and so in the middle of just like an everyday like thing, you're not expecting it, and it just reaches out and shocks you in the most horrifying way.
And now with AI and how quickly people generate AI, I admit it was my fault. I sent it to my brother and to Hannah because I was hoping it was an AI generated video, that it couldn't possibly be real, and that he would be fine. Like, Trump scared us, but he was okay. Mm-hmm. And he wasn't fine, and it was real, and it was horrific, and it's one of the worst things I've ever seen. I did watch Saddam Hussein get hanged when I was in high school, and I thought that maybe because he was a bad guy I would feel okay with it. And I remembered my stomach dropping, and I had wished that I hadn't watched it after I saw it.
Yeah, I think I don't know if it's okay to say, like, I don't want this podcast to get flagged, so I avoided saying the name a minute ago, but like Hitler, for example, everyone can agree that he was a terrible person and needed to be put down. Maybe not everyone can agree. I think a lot of people can agree that that he needed to be put down. And I don't think whatever, I shouldn't speak in such generalities, but I, for one, am not sad that he died. Yeah. And I can't think of a more like epitome of evil example of somebody that like perhaps you'd be a little bit happy to hear the news that somebody like that died. Speaking for myself, I still think I would not want to watch a video of that moment, like or see the body or see the aftermath. It's not about how good or bad the person was. It's about what it does to you as a human being to watch that. And I guess this is a little bit off topic at this point, but the fact is it's 2025. People are on camera all the time, and we all saw a 31-year-old father of two get shot down in the most brutal, random, out of nowhere way. Yeah.
And I mean, to me, it speaks to what a good person should feel is disgust and anguish, even if like Hannah didn't really know who Charlie Kirk was, didn't have a lot of background on it.
It's true, yeah. I've heard you say his name, but obviously before this week, but I didn't know anything meaningful about him.
Yeah, and I'm a person who like watched Turning Point USA, knew that it was like kicking up, and sometimes I would like things that I saw out of Charlie Kirk early on, and sometimes I wouldn't. I hated Candace Owens from the start. I thought she was an unresearched, bad arguer, an
grifter.
Idiot. And later on, definitely, like, as soon as she got out on her own or actually worked for the Daily Wire, I thought, I don't think she believes anything she's saying. Like, how could you really believe something if you haven't looked into it at all? Yeah. It's how it felt. But on the whole, like, I felt like Charlie Kirk grew into his beliefs. Like, in the beginning, I was like, well, he's 18, but I don't think he's making a very good argument here or there. But it was like, as he matured, I think his arguments matured, and I think the way he approached other people matured. And I think more often than not, he was getting good back and forth from people. Even when he didn't, he was still respectful. And that's not something you often see. Like, I think Ben Shapiro's capable of that and does it well. I think Charlie Kirk did it well. And I had actually received a message from my brother just hours before where he said, I always thought that these Turning Point kids would like sell us out, but to his credit, Charlie Kirk never did.
Hours before?
Yeah, it was just a few hours before.
How weird is that?
And and so I said something to him along the lines of that I agreed with him. Like that, like I finally really liked Charlie Kirk, and then he died. And it's a shame, not just because, like we liked him and we started to like the voice that he had, that he's starting to represent so many of us who, we're not MAGA, we're just conservatives. But it also is terrible because he stood for free speech and having real conversations, which is something I think we can all see even in friendships now can be really lacking. Like,
I think really lacking, unfortunately, is such an understatement. Like, and just to back up a second, I was going to bring this up, but yeah, you already did it for me. Like, I didn't know who Charlie Kirk was before this week. Not in any meaningful way other than like maybe having some name recognition, but I didn't know anything about what he stood for. I think I probably wouldn't have even really identified that he was on the right. I didn't know his politics per se, but I think as a bit of an outsider, like looking in on the situation, something that I see that's really different from other acts of political violence or even like just civilian violence in the past is that he's been in the public eye since he basically was a kid. Yeah. It's almost like if one of the Disney kids, like who grew up to have a career later, like you've watched this person grow up in real time you've watched them evolve and like strengthen, and like nobody has like a perfect grip on life at 18, right? So you've seen him like sort of like comb through his values and like put down what doesn't serve him anymore and like choose his direction a little bit more carefully with age. I think that's really special to be able to watch on the scale that somebody like Charlie Kirk would have had. And that's really an explanation of what we're seeing, so many of these like people in his life having live reactions to the news and being devastated. Like, every life is precious. I'm not trying to say anyone is or isn't more important, but this is sort of a unique situation because I think a lot of people probably viewed him like this little brother. Like, they watched him become himself. Yeah. And at 31, like, he was just getting started.
Yeah, and I think when you hear someone like Ben Shapiro say, that kid's going to be the head of the RNC someday, or someone like Kayleigh McEnany being one of the first ones to learn about Turning Point USA because they were both coming up on Fox News together before she was press secretary, and really just knowing that somebody close to your age but younger than you was going to do something big, and because he was ambitious and smart. But I think
he's this promising little brother, like golden boy, and you can't help but cheer him on.
I think what stands out is that there are probably so many people that, to your point, felt very protective of him. And then also, like, no matter where you were politically, like Dave Smith, this libertarian who's been really outspoken anti-Israel, and Charlie was on the other side of that, met him and said he had no reason to be nice to me, and he was. And it's like, it's a person who has more of a positive impact on so many people that they meet than a negative impact. So there are so many people that that's true of, to the point that there's, you know, a joke where people say, if I want to be protected from being murdered, you know, I better not have a smile that lights up a room, you know, because it's always like, it seems like it's always like good people who really do, you know, bring people together, whether it's good or bad or what have you, but like who the people that they know, they make that impact that somebody wants to take them down, take them down a notch. They feel threatened by that because maybe they're an electrician that lives in their parents' basement that, you know, just is not going to do great things, can't stand if somebody else is.
Which we're finding out, like, to kind of sidetrack a little bit, we're not sidetrack, but like go down that avenue. We're finding out the suspect, don't remember his name, don't care to look it up, don't care to repeat it and give it airtime, is a young person, I believe 22 years old, who is in his third year of electrician apprenticeship, living in his parents' basement. Is that right?
Yeah, and it's somebody who could have done something with their education because he got a presidential scholarship worth $32K and didn't graduate, didn't go, I believe, to the second semester of school, and it paid for 4 or 5.
Yeah, dropped out almost immediately of the school where the shooting took place. And I believe somebody, like, he had put some kind of messages on Discord or whatever saying that here's this person he hates, and he said he was going to, quote, my school. It's like, bitch, can you call it your school? Are you sure it's your school? Because I feel like you barely darkened the doorway.
And the irony is, I feel like Charlie Kirk, he would sometimes get attacked by leftists on campus for pointing out that he didn't think that college was mandatory anymore, that there were a lot of good ways to get great opportunities in your life by taking a different path.
I think literally anybody would tell you that. I don't think that's a political issue, but sure.
And basically, I mean, the kids would attack him because he didn't graduate from a college.
Oh, he didn't?
No, and it's like...
Kid didn't need it. Look at him. Look at how successful he was. Okay.
Exactly. And to me, it's so funny that, like, I saw a different, you know, comment about how it's so ironic that, you know, people are getting fired for their jobs for posting that they're glad something bad happened to him, when if you posted half of the things that Charlie Kirk was saying, then you'd get fired from your job. It's like, Well, I don't think that's true. A lot of his tweets were pretty tame. You know, something along the lines of like, try keeping the Sabbath this week and see if, you know, checking out and just kind of putting your phone away feels good for you. It really helps me.
Which isn't a controversial thing. Like,
exactly.
Unplugging is a good thing. And if you want to do it for Jesus, or you want to do it for yourself, or you want to do it for your dog,
yeah,
it's a good idea.
Yeah, like, I don't think that's necessarily true, but it's like, no, I'm sorry. Charlie Kirk started his own organization, and he's not going to fire himself. And if you want to tweet whatever you want to tweet, that's fine, provided you're not working for somebody representing somebody who can fire you.
So on the tack of tweeting and stuff like this, the larger issue, and I'm sure you'll agree with me here, Ash, I think the thing that has our nation in turmoil is it's not that a 31-year-old father of two was shot on live camera feed. It's not that this senseless tragedy happened on a school campus. I think what has everyone up in arms is this idea that Charlie held, from what you've told me, what I've read online since this happened, this idea that Charlie held really near and dear to his heart, like this idea of free speech.
Yeah.
He was a huge champion of it, made his career more or less about it. This idea that you are allowed to say what you want to say, and words are not violence. Words are your... Okay, in the sense of the American Constitution, words are your God-given right.
Yeah.
And you have every right to express them.
Yeah.
And somebody felt so in opposition to that idea, so offended by Charlie Kirk's words, that he shot him down in front of his wife and kids and the nation watching on live feed.
Yeah, and I've heard that the two things leading up in the course of the conversation he was having with students were that he, even though he was raised evangelical, and his wife was Catholic, there are videos of him basically talking to people from all walks of life, Jewish kids, Mormon kids, and just being grateful that they all have faith and that they try to be good people and accepting of that. So he said that he knew really good Mormons and that he thought Mormons were good people. And this was a kid who was raised Mormon from what we can tell so far, and probably
the shooter was Mormon?
Yeah, has a lot of anger about it.
Oh.
And they said that it was right after he had said that he was shot.
See, and that's funny. It just tells you about the media and what certain reporting agencies choose to highlight, etc. I had heard something totally different.
Was it something about being trans?
Yes, it was.
Yeah, because I've read multiple reports too.
And this is another like heart of the issue. So we have the idea that, I'm just going to back up to myself for a second, because this is all we're going to talk about today. This is a big enough story where I feel like this is our show. So you have the idea of like free speech and this concept that you should be allowed to disagree with each other without it coming to guns and violence.
Yeah.
If you have a difference of opinion, words are not violence. And if you escalate it to that level, you're the one who's out of line. And that point is like totally being debated online. Like because he was a Second Amendment advocate, that he somehow had it coming. I feel like that's not a subject I want to take on personally, because I understand. I am going to harken back to like, I remember conversations with people like over the years in my life about pro-choice versus pro-life.
Sure.
And I had gotten to the point, which I think is a reasonable one to come to. I'm very pro-choice, but I've gotten to the point where I realize that the people who are pro-life believe it is murder of a child, a murder of an infant.
Yeah.
And I feel like I have at least a sense of ability to imagine if I really thought somebody was murdering babies, I would be just as upset as they are.
Yeah.
So it's not a matter of values of like whether or not it's okay to murder babies. It's a matter of like definition.
Yeah.
So I think I can apply that to the Second Amendment, where if I really thought that having gun rights in America was the reason that children were getting murdered in schools or shot down in a very public way, like what we saw this week. I understand that if I believed that the Second Amendment was the cause of these events, I would be as upset as these people are. And so the real issue is not, do I value kids' lives? The issue is, do I think that having gun rights costs kids' lives?
Well, and what's interesting about that, it's like, I think I could use a real simple analogy in defense of Charlie, and like, I would hope have it make sense to the other side. Basically saying, hey, have you heard about these knife bans in England? They're even trying to keep, like kitchen knives away from people because there's so many stabbings in England.
Practical.
And if I think that's cuckoo crazy, I do not then support anybody who doesn't get along with somebody else can stab people to death. And that seems pretty clear.
However, I think that's something that is so easy. It seems obvious to say it like that, but at the same time, it's so easy to forget. And this is what we're seeing with this case in particular, is people going online saying, like, if you dedicate your life to protecting a thing that is dangerous, you shouldn't be surprised when that thing turns on you. And that is, for so many reasons, ignorant and fraught with logical fallacy. Yeah. But that's what we're seeing.
And to me, it's so funny because it's like, if the shoe is on the other foot and the gun is there for your protection, it's like, it's just leveling your playing field, especially if there's like an illegal gun involved.
Sure. But
I also think that sometimes it can be an equalizer, like for women, that, I saw that horrific video also of the Ukrainian.
Yes.
That was, she was here to have a safe place to get out of a war zone, and we should have been able to keep her safer than living in a war zone.
So guys, we're talking about the Ukrainian refugee who was here for asylum. And was stabbed on a New York subway.
No, a bus.
I'm sorry. Yeah. She was here like as a refugee and came here for her safety and was killed on public transit in broad daylight.
And my thought is, like, if you're here and you're here legally because you sought asylum, she had just as much right to a weapon as any of us, and I wish that she had had a gun that day because she was terrified. You saw images of her being terrified after the first stab wound, and I wish that she had been able to blow this career criminal away.
So we were trying so hard to remember the other thing I was talking about with somebody this week that just had me really down. That was the other thing. It was, again, an instance of somebody just cut down mercilessly, randomly.
For no reason.
In the middle of their day for no reason, and it's caught on live feed.
Yeah.
And I saw these pictures of her. I don't think I can talk about it.
Yeah, I understand that. I really do. And
to have two instances of that this week is so upsetting.
And it's really overwhelming to know that we're living in a world where everything is live all the time. And it's like, I understand that, but I didn't want to be exposed to what I saw. I didn't want to watch someone that I think had a good influence on the world be shot. And I wouldn't want to watch a stranger be killed either.
It was a rough week, and I don't think there's any coming back from this. And just, I guess since we're talking about live feeds and cameras and stuff like that, I will say there were so many celebrity reactions. So many people, especially in the political realm, were live doing podcasts when this Charlie Kirk shooting happened. Yeah. That we have, for better, for worse, I can't even say, I was going to say unfortunately, and I think it is kind of unfortunate. We have all these huge celebrity people with live reactions to this news, and it's devastating, guys. It was rough.
Yeah, it was interesting to me, honestly, to watch Joe Rogan, who had Charlie Sheen on, react to it. I think for two reasons. One, he was a Charlie talking about a Charlie who I think we all would have expected Charlie Sheen to die well before Charlie Kirk, because
he's pickled at this point.
Yeah, because there's a lot going on there. That's all I'm going to say. But to have Charlie Sheen be a voice of reason in a situation like this, when the guy definitely had his rough patches and his bouts of cruelty, but Joe Rogan like held his head in his hands because he couldn't believe that it happened, and that really he's somebody who does what Charlie Kirk does.
Yeah, I was gonna say it's sort of like an analogous position that he holds in the culture.
Yeah.
Like here you have saying like polarizing things, political things. It comes back to that free speech idea that we were talking about earlier. Like how we react to each other when we don't agree is changing.
Yeah.
And that is incredibly difficult and terrifying to wrap our heads around. Like this cannot be normal.
No, and really like Rogan, even if you don't always agree with him, because like why should everybody agree with everybody all the time? He has real conversations.
I respect him as an interviewer so much. Like he's always asking the question I want to ask and then better.
Yeah.
Like I think the guy's a renaissance man, and we could have a whole show on Joe Rogan. I think he's so interesting and weird and cool. But I don't think I can come up with a better interviewer. He's so good at what he does.
I think he is, but I also think it's really interesting that there are times that I don't agree with Rogan, that the person interview or like really just having a conversation, because that's more what it is, and maybe that's why it's a better interview, that it's really people just talking things through together. Mm-hmm. When he is challenged, I feel like he accepts it when he's wrong, and he'll do it live.
Yeah, and I think that makes you... I do think that makes you a better interviewer.
And I think
like you're not just like looking at a note card and unchanging,
yeah.
and like it's a one-way conversation where you ask questions and nothing comes back at you. Like it's as you said, it's a conversation, and it's a two-way challenge.
Yeah, why I think, it was a failure on the part of the Harris campaign to not do the interview is I don't think he's a gotcha guy. I think he's somebody who wants to have a real conversation, and if you're capable of that, you'll come off well. Mm-hmm. And I think that's why Trump and J.D. Vance did come off well, because they are capable of having a conversation. And I don't know that Harris is. She just giggles through it and kind of looks for the talking points. And I think maybe that was a good call, actually, on her part. She could have come off really bad just by not being able to have a conversation.
Yeah. Well, and again, this harkens back to the whole idea of this story is tragic enough on its own, but then the reaction of the nation, how people are handling it, the fact that it's polarizing whatsoever.
Yeah.
That's the real, I think, difficult takeaway from this week is how we're treating each other about it.
Yeah.
It's, I've seen some of the grossest things I've seen online this week. I feel like I don't expect anyone who disagrees with them to change, who disagreed with Charlie Kirk to change their mind about him. I don't expect anyone to put down, their arguments that would have been, if he had been alive, that would have been against his arguments. Yeah. I'm seeing people really struggle to have humanity in this situation.
I think I took it pretty hard. Yeah. And, the day it happened, I wasn't able to sleep. I slept incredibly poorly, and I kept getting up and seeing more stuff about his family and everything. And I think part of the reason is, as much as I warmed to Charlie Kirk, I kept thinking about, to younger people and to people who are more in line with Charlie Kirk's beliefs than I am, what he must be to them. And I think the reason that happened for me is because I kept thinking about how I would feel if someone did that to Ben Shapiro.
Sure, yeah.
Because Ben Shapiro...
He fills that role for you.
Apart from Thomas Sowell, who's a 94-year-old economist, Ben Shapiro, to me, is the biggest hero I have on the planet. Yeah. And I think if I was a kid who was there at that event to see my hero, and someone shot my hero, I think my heart would be broken. And really my heart was broken for Charlie and his family anyway. But I thought, what if this kid was my biggest hero on earth?
Your Ben Shapiro.
Yeah. And I ended up seeing a video of him going up the stairs to to the event.
Charlie.
Yeah, and these kids stopped him, and they gave him praise, and he said, like, thank you so much, and he shook their hands, and he said, I'm gonna come see you after the event. And I just kept thinking, I bet you he would have.
Yeah.
And he never got the chance to do it.
Yeah.
And these kids were probably waiting to have a picture taken, just spend some time with a hero of theirs. And it's just a small snippet of what he stole from people, this shooter, like, let alone his family. So it really just, like, it shook me. I felt disgusted, I felt sick, and I felt angry, like, all at once, and really sad. And now I'm seeing all this stuff, just trying to put it on the right. Like, there was a commentator who was fired from MSNBC because he said he was divisive and a hateful person, and it was all before he died.
I will say that divisive is fair. I think he had polarizing opinions. He was outspoken. I don't think even Charlie, and maybe I'm speaking out of turn here because I only just am learning about him, but I wouldn't think that a free speech proponent would necessarily take objection to being called divisive. I think
that's fine.
He was unusual in that he was outspoken and exercising his right in a way you don't typically see.
Well, would you know what I mean if I said I think the reaction to him could be really one way or the other? But I do think that the man himself tried very hard not to be divisive, and that's the irony of it. I think he tried to engage people where other people wouldn't.
And I do agree with that. And I think that's the really cool and special thing. And the thing that we are lacking sorely in our culture today, and that is being highlighted in the way the media is treating his death, is that this is something we always talk about on this podcast, is this breakdown of conversation between people who disagree with each other. It's shocking, and it's getting to a place where I don't know how long it would take to repair.
Yeah.
Or if it could be. Like, this is it's wild to me to see, and again, this is somebody I'm only just learning about. I see him being quoted a certain way by a leftist site, and then I'm seeing the full context of that quote by a conservative site and realizing that he's, like, totally been taken out of context.
Yeah.
I'm seeing reactions from people that consider him, like, I'm seeing reactions from my black friends saying that he was extremely racist, like black Christians versus white Christians reactions to his death, or all these different, like, parties that want to pull his ideology apart. It's bizarre to me to see him represented so differently, and the internet is, like, so divided on him, and you can't find a moderate opinion. Yeah. It's very interesting to me.
And I do think people will look for what they want to see. There's some confirmation bias. But I will say that a lot of the arguments that I think are taken out of context are arguments Thomas Sowell himself has made. There's a quote from Charlie Kirk, which I love, which is, read Thomas Sowell, it'll help you. And there are things that Thomas Sowell has said that Charlie has parroted. And when Thomas Sowell says it, because he's an old black man, it's fine. And if Charlie says it, it's racist. And one of those things are that the literacy rates and the marriage rates of black Americans prior to the civil rights movement were much higher. And Charlie points that out to point out that government, the heavy influence of government on the black community has destroyed those things for black people.
Okay.
And not like, well, we were so much better off before the civil rights movement.
Okay.
Like,
and I guess it's exactly issues like that I'm seeing. So I see like a right/conservative opinion on the context of those statements, and then I'm seeing my black or brown friends on Facebook or whatever platform have you, their reactions to it, or just like a white leftist reactions to it, and it's like three different stories.
What's really interesting is I didn't know the full context of the empathy quote. They said, that Charlie had said something about not believing in empathy, so I'm not going to have any empathy for Charlie, kind of a thing. So Julie Borowski, a libertarian, who's not a conservative, obviously, she brought up the full context of that quote and said that Charlie preferred sympathy because empathy implies really being in someone's shoes, and he didn't really believe that you could ever truly be in another person's shoes, that you have to have sympathy for what they're going through, not empathy. And that's all he really said. And she agreed with it.
Which I will say, if I have heard that sort of idea talked about before, it's almost leftist. Like, I have heard the idea that you can't possibly understand someone else's experience and journey and stuff like that. Like, that, to me, that should be a unifying idea. But if you're only taking a tiny piece of his concept, his quote, it sounds terrible.
And just one other thing I wanted to mention is that John Stossel, who had a libertarian show on Fox News years ago, said that he met Charlie for a segment when he was young, like younger, starting out, but also, doing this college campus tour. And John Stossel said that young people were kind of scaring him, that he thought they were all socialists. And Charlie said, they're not all socialists. He goes, they might say they support and like socialism, but then you ask them about income tax. And he said 70% of them will say that they do not want to pay more in taxes. He said, I don't think they necessarily understand everything they believe yet. But don't worry about them. They're smart. And as soon as they figure out what it is they believe on a case-by-case basis, they'll come to the truth. And I think John Stossel said, I think he was trying to help them.
Yeah.
Just help them work through their own beliefs.
Yeah.
And that's what you do, really, when you have a conversation about that stuff. I remember it was an adult lady that was running for governor of New Mexico, Susana Martinez. She was coming up, and these guys liked her, and they asked her if she and her husband would have coffee with them. And as she's working on the campaign, she ended up switching teams because she goes, I'll be damned, we're Republicans. She became a great governor
because of
New
this
Mexico.
Conversation and coffee with these young people. That's funny.
So to me, it's like maybe people do need to get out of the whole cultist tribal mentality.
Absolutely.
And look at stuff, and really that was all he was trying to accomplish.
And whether or not I agree with every single thing that he ever put out there into the world or not, I really admire somebody who's still trying to talk to people who disagree with them, who's still trying to have a respectful conversation. And I think absolutely the aftermath of what happened this week shows that we need that more than ever. Like, we need a put your weapons down, and if you are interested in like improving yourself and bettering yourself, or possibly improving and bettering someone else, something has to change. Like, what we're doing is not working. It's just team versus team, and I'm sick of it.
Yeah, and maybe, this is silly to say to you, Hannah, but I feel like I really admire an evangelical Christian who can marry Catholic. Tell kids that are Mormon that he thinks Mormons are good people, and tell Jewish kids that he has great respect for them.
I was absolutely thinking the same thing because we've discussed on early episodes of this podcast, I was raised really fundamentally Christian, and while the people who were very close to me in that, like my family in that community, wasn't necessarily representative of all the other influences I had around me, the people like ancillary to my immediate family did not consider Catholics to be Christian, did not consider Jews to be like deserving of heaven, like or Mormons either. I remember we had a whole segment, I think it was a whole fucking month, about like Mormonism and why they're not going to heaven. So I admire somebody who can see past even what can, like, the rest of the world might consider to be a simple boundary. I can promise you, people who are raised like Charlie Kirk, like, that is not a simple boundary.
Yeah. And I mean, if you're somebody who respects good people, respects people who are there to have the conversation, and maybe even people who are totally different from you, who are on the other side, who want to come up there and talk to you, but in a respectful way. I really appreciate that about people. And like, I've had so many friends on the left unfriend me over the past 10 years on Facebook and never talk to me again. I have, I think, 4 people who've kept me on their friends list and no more than that. And 3 of them express sorrow over this. And I'm grateful for...
Well, that's very human and kind of them.
Yeah, I'm really grateful that even the 4th one hasn't said anything nasty about it, and that all 4 of those people, you know, they don't cut me out of their life completely because I think differently from them. It's refreshing when people can just find humanity. And
yeah, I don't think seeing someone gunned down on video for having an opinion that some people disagreed with, I don't think that should be a polarizing situation. I think it should be a situation that brings us together and reminds us that we do have more in common than not. And the only way to solve problems like these is to come together.
yeah, it's really true. There's, political commentators like Nick Fuentes, who I think is just a really, really nasty, hateful person. And I think he's racist, and he hates Jews, and he's a terrible, terrible man. If somebody shot him for that, though, it's like, that wouldn't be okay.
Unacceptable.
It's unacceptable.
There's plenty of people on the left that I think behind closed doors, privately, just between Ash and I, we've joked around that like maybe politics would be a smoother road if this person wasn't involved anymore. There is no person, past, present, or that I can imagine in the future that we would celebrate their death.
No.
Interestingly, I've been listening to The Stranger Beside Me on audiobook, and we watched a couple documentaries and like made-for-TV shows and stuff about Ted Bundy lately, and the subject of capital punishment came up between me and a friend this week, and I have reaffirmed my position on capital punishment, which is besides the point here. But part of my conversation with this friend about it was that like taking a life is a big and heavy and serious thing. I can't imagine even a righteous, just capital punishment situation being a cause for joy for anybody. When Ted Bundy was put to death, that wasn't and should not have been a joyous occasion. I think we all lose a little bit when people leave us, even if the reason they leave us is just. And this situation is the opposite of that, is absolutely not just.
Yeah, it was a real tragedy. And Hannah, you pointed out that there was a school shooting that happened on the same day.
Yeah, this is something that I want to address because it's an argument I keep seeing from leftist sources and friends and stuff that I have. It's going back to Second Amendment rights and people arguing that maybe Charlie Kirk had it coming because he advocated for, private gun ownership. And another aspect of that is this school shooting that happened in Colorado, and, people lost their lives, innocent young kids lost their lives. And this idea of why is everyone's talking about this gun activist, but nobody's talking about these kids. I don't want that to be said of us, and I don't want it to be an either or situation. It's a fallacy that you can only care about Charlie Kirk or the kids who died in the shooting.
Yes.
The loss of human life, it's murder in both cases. It's senseless in both cases. It's undeserved and unjust and should be avenged in both cases. I don't see why we have to pick which one to be outraged about.
And I think it's entirely possible, and I'm going to quote Samuel L. Jackson on this, or
Hell
at least
yeah.
make reference to something that he said. He said he didn't think it was a gun problem. He thought it was a lack of humanity problem, that people were forgetting the value of human life.
Absolutely.
And I think this whole thing, both of these situations really speak to that. It's like there's something wrong with a culture that doesn't acknowledge how important each and every one of us are. And I think that comes personally from the idea that's sort of like commingled in what we're teaching kids these days. It's that they are special and, you know, like they can be whatever they want to be, like including like you can change your gender, you can do all of that. It seems like they're pretty important and probably could elevate their needs and wants and feelings above everybody else's needs and wants and feelings in a lot of cases. At the same time, if somebody disagrees with you, now all of a sudden you're calling them names, things that, like, you have a right to your beliefs, but all of a sudden they don't have a right to their own. I feel like we're getting into that place, like, I hate the term like snowflake, you know, but like where people think that if they have a feeling that hurts, that they can change that feeling into physical pain on somebody else. And that's a big part of it. And another thing is just sort of like, I think we're dehumanizing people who disagree with us now. That you can throw a blanket label on a whole group of people who doesn't hold the same opinion instead of talking to people as individuals. And I think it's this tribalism, like there's more collectives, like I fall into this group instead of I'm this person. And she falls into this group instead of like Hannah's her own person that I could talk to about these things and actually get to know her. And maybe I'd like her because of...
Well, I sure hope so.
Well, we know I like you, but I mean, because of other things. Like we have a friend who we don't talk politics with. We know we don't align, and we still get along because we can talk about movies, music, a million other things, you know, like our families and our pets. And it's a totally normal friendship that any of us would have had 10 years ago.
I think the pendulum, we talk about this a lot, right? Like it's extremes, and the pendulum swings one way and then people see the error of that way and get sick of it, and then the pendulum swings in the other direction, and we spend a lot of time in society like doing the opposite thing and hurting ourselves. And so I think the pendulum of like deadbeat Gen X and do nothing yuppies has sort of come to the opposite arc in 2025 or so, where everything is uber political. And I see I'm in a professional group for my job profession on social media, and every time somebody says like, can't we just leave politics out of it because this is about our profession, sure as the sun rises in the east, someone will say like, that's why we're in the mess that we're in, and politics is should be a part of every conversation. And there's this like savage need to dehumanize and degrade people who don't agree with you because you think somehow it's your golden right and you have to save the world on your own with your words and shit on everybody who doesn't agree with you. And I'm seeing it in, I think we've already talked about my job. I work in clinical labs. This is a science-based industry that is black and white and fact-based. There is no room for politics here.
Yeah.
And it's infecting even that group. It makes sense that this 22-year-old with probable blossoming mental illness, undiagnosed, unhinged, feels like it's his personal responsibility to right the wrongs he sees in the world because that's what everyone around him is telling him. I'm not saying it's an excuse, and I'm not saying it's okay. Obviously it's not. And I think he's probably fertile soil for bad ideas. I'll be honest, I don't care what this kid's story is. I don't give a shit. I don't give a shit. I hope he is removed from situations where he could hurt other people, and that's the best I can hope for him. I hope he's put away to where he can't make his own decisions. Yeah,
and I just hope that the focus is on Charlie, on the things that he actually valued, the person he actually was, and just that there's some hope and a future for his family. I just hope that his family finds peace, and that everybody who looked up to him just remembers the good things he stood for instead of being angry and, falling into the negatives like what this shooter did.
Yeah, and Charlie obviously is the famous person that this happened to this week, but I wish the same for the victims of the Colorado shooting and for the Ukrainian refugee who lost her life in New York this week as well. Those people had stories and they had hopes, and I don't think it's a stretch to say that I think each and every one of them had something good that they were trying to do in the world and a positive change that they were trying to bring even just to the people immediately around them. I hope that there's a really beautiful Jewish saying about people in times like this where it's not rest in peace, it's may your memory be a blessing. And we know that that's already true for these people, and I hope that we can keep our focus on that these people's memories are a blessing to us, and I hope that we can keep our focus on what that means and how we can honor that.
And just to tie it back to something that we've already said, I think, we should wrap on something that Charlie Kirk used to say all the time, that each of us, he believed, was here for a reason, that we had, good things to do in the world, a path that was made for us. And although it was cut short, I think he walked that path. So
until next time, guys, thank you for listening.
Thank you for listening.